Welcome back to the Daily Mastermind. My name is George Wright III with your daily dose of inspiration, motivation, and education. I hope you're having an amazing week. I'm very happy to be able to share with you a short segment today by one of my mentors, an individual I've worked with for several years. His name's Clint Coons. He's a 7-figure mentor, a nationally recognized asset protection attorney, and real estate investor. He's an individual that really understands what it takes to structure your business, your investments, your wealth in the best possible way to avoid lawsuits, to reduce your taxes, and to maximize all of the benefits that are available to you as an individual in the economy right now. And so I'm super excited. He was a guest speaker in one of our keynotes at our Protect Wealth Summit we did here just a little while back, our live stream. We had massive success at that event. People loved working with him, loved talking with him. He's very interactive, and he's an individual that can absolutely teach you some things to help you to grow your wealth and sustain the success that you have. So what I'm going to do is I took a short clip. It's about 24 minutes. I took a clip from our summit with some information that Clint shares that I think will open up your eyes to the world of structure, lawsuit protection, and finding ways to protect your wealth. Because listen, you can spend a lifetime creating wealth, and it only takes a few days to lose it. So it's really important to me that you have the right structure. And what we found over time is that a lot of individuals do not, do not have the best structure. And what I mean by that is the best business structure and entity, the best structure for their particular situation that helps them to drastically reduce their taxes, minimize taxes, and protect themselves and their estate. So I'm going to share this with you, and I want you to sit back, take a lot of notes, review it as often as you can. I hope it's something that gives you some good ideas, and I'll jump back on at the end of this clip.
So lawsuits are a problem, and we have to address that. That is the elephant in the room that we talk about. Now, I will tell you this, that for the next couple of minutes, 10, 15 minutes, I am going to throw a lot of examples at you here when it comes to the ways you can be sued. And I've heard people say, well, Clint, you're just trying to scare us. You're trying to peddle fear. You're right, I am. And I make no bones about it. I'm not ashamed of trying to scare you. Does fear motivate? Absolutely it does. My job is to motivate you to take action, to do something, to commit to changing where you're at today, to create a better tomorrow for you and your family, to ensure that that one unknown lawsuit that comes against you isn't going to wipe you out. Because if you knew when you were going to get sued, well, then you would take actions to prevent it from happening. But we don't know when those lawsuits are going to strike. And so if you don't appreciate the fear, then you're not going to understand it, and you're not going to take the necessary steps to minimize it. And there's lots of strategies around this that we'll be discussing. So I'd like to know this. What is the average number of lawsuits an individual will be involved with during their lifetime? Just throw in the Q&A. Throw up a number. How many times do you think the average individual will be sued? If you want to type in a number, it'd be great. So John says 12. All right, John, I would love to know what profession you're in. Kristen says 3. Robert's got 2. Rayanne says 15. All right, there's some liability generators on this webinar now. We got Tito says 5. We got a lot of 5s. We got some 3s, 2s. William's throwing up a 7. Michelle, she wrote a 3. Look at the numbers coming in here. Okay, a lot of 5. So you can see here that unlimited. Stacy, nice. So you says unlimited number. Okay, you're right. Depending on what you do, you could be unlimited. Sue, you haven't been sued so far. That's great. So when you look at this, there's kind of a common theme here, is that nobody wrote 0. And I think that's interesting, is that we all appreciate that we have the potential to be involved in a lawsuit. In fact, the statistic says that the average individual will be involved in 5 lawsuits during their lifetime. My mother-in-law has experienced it. In fact, when I say her lifetime, it really came down to, since I've been married to Tracy. We got married when I was 22, she was 23. And as soon as I had passed the bar, within 3 years of actually passing the bar and being sworn in as an attorney, my mother-in-law decided to start up the lawsuit generator for herself, and she's been involved in 5. And I've had to defend her all 5 times. And I will tell you this, you never charge your mother-in-law Okay, happy wife equals happy life. And if your law firm inadvertently sends her a bill accidentally for $60,000, it's a very chilling reception when you come home. When someone is staring at you holding a piece of paper, you know something's wrong when you walk into the house. And I will tell you, for the gentleman on the call, if you ever come home and your wife is like that, your best defense right away is to do what I always do. You apologize right away. I'm sorry. My wife would ask me, why are you saying you're sorry? I'm like, the hell if I know, but I'm going to get ahead of this before this ball starts rolling down the hill. Now, it doesn't necessarily work all the time, so I've adopted a new strategy. I wake up every morning and I tell my wife I'm sorry. She asked me, why are you doing that? And I said, extra credit. You never know. So when it comes to planning, my mother-in-law was involved in this, and it's something that you should be aware of as well, that it's important. So what are some ways in which you can be sued? All right, let's look at COVID right now, right? We're on a call right now in this webinar because of COVID-19. So what does that mean to you? Well, this is a threat, especially if you own real estate. I think it's a huge threat for investors, or if you're a small business owner, because attorneys are just waiting to pounce. Insurance is not going to cover you. That's already been decided. There have been some litigation actually going on over it right now. And in fact, many state houses are trying to pass legislation to prevent it. I know the Senate has taken this up, and they're being blocked in the Senate to prevent federal legislation to prevent attorneys from profiting off of COVID. Okay, because it's so difficult to know. Professionals keep coming out, medical professionals, and they keep saying, well, you can contract it this way, you can contract it this way. They really don't know. But you're supposed to be able to figure all this stuff out and plan around it to ensure that your patrons of your business, your tenants, are not exposed to it through your own actions. How could that happen? Well, let's say you send someone out to one of your properties because there's a toilet that is not running properly, because the flapper is not fully closed, but the tenant doesn't know how to just lift off the back of the toilet seat and fix the flapper. They need someone to come out and take a look at it. So you send out a handyman to go out there. Handyman goes out to the property. He is asymptomatic. He transfers that to the tenant inadvertently through contact or whatever it is, and that person passes away because they're an elderly person with comorbidities, or maybe they're not elderly, they just have a weakened immune system. Where does that put you? Puts you in the crosshairs of a lawsuit. Or you have a building where several tenants contracted, and they say you didn't do enough to clean the common areas. Or you have a business, people come into your business, and they say you weren't using proper social distancing techniques, wearing a mask, and everything else that goes on out there. That puts us at risk, okay? Or maybe it has nothing to do with that business-wise. Maybe it's just you come down with it, you're around somebody else in a social gathering, you think you're being safe, and that you become that asymptomatic carrier that conveys it on to several other people. What's to stop them from suing you? Nothing. And so this is a huge concern, and that is why in the current environment, I think asset protection, until we figure out how they're going to protect individuals to stop the attorney lobby from controlling a certain aspect of our politicians and allowing the legal system to be used as a hammer in this particular time, you need to take action on your own to protect yourself. Other things you have, if you have real estate, toxic mold, that's a huge one. Okay, toxic mold, how does that come about? Well, it comes about from water. Mold's in any property pretty much. You can probably find some mold somewhere, somehow, if there is moisture. Now, depending on where you live, you're going to have more moisture than other places. If you live in a humid environment, it's just going to happen. I remember one of the apartments I rented, Tracy and I rented when I was in law school, and around the windows, every fall and through the winter, there would be mold all around the windows. And it was a new building as well this apartment they were renting. It just happened. Did I look at it as toxic? No, we did our best to scrub it and keep it clean and keep airflow through there. But we didn't view it as a path to riches by suing the landlord over this. But you saw over time, attorneys figured out, hey, this is the pot of gold. Go after people for toxic mold. And it kind of rhymes, but that's what an attorney wrote up on a CLE on the screen one time when he taught the CLE on how to go after and sue people for toxic mold. And so we have a client that's involved in a lawsuit right now over toxic mold, where the tenant installed his own washing machine without the knowledge of our client as a landlord. When they evicted him, the tenant, of course, took his washing machine. He didn't install it properly. It leaked. It sprayed water, light stream of water over the wall, and mold developed there. He's now using that fact to hold our client responsible for this toxic mold poisoning that he insinuates he, his wife, his young children have endured as a result of living in that sick property. Now, you may think, well, that's just part of investing. Just turn it over to your insurance company. You can't, because that is an environmental contamination and you're on your own. And I've seen situations where people have had to go through this before. And it's quite scary to be involved in that type of case, because they are going to allege facts, damages that will pale in comparison to a lot of situations, a lot of types of lawsuits, because they're all speculative, that there are going to be untold amounts of medical bills in the future. And it's, how do you prove it or disprove that? It's very, very difficult. That's a huge one. Failed contracts. Each and every one of you wants to start a business. I don't care if it's real estate investing, whatever you want to do, you're going to have to sign your name on the contract at some point in time. And the mistake that people make is that when they sign their name on their contract, they do it in their own name. They're not limiting their liability. So if, let's say it was real estate, I wanted to enter into a purchase and sale agreement for real estate, make sure that you're not doing it in your own name. You're doing it in the name of an entity, an LLC or corporation, depending on the type of property you're looking to purchase, so that if something goes wrong, they can't hold you liable. Because if you put your name down, you can actually be sued if you don't go through and close on the property. After your due diligence phase, you decide, well, I'm going to lose my earnest money, I'm going to back out, I'm willing to lose $2,000. No, they could still sue you. And it's happened to our clients before where they didn't follow our advice. They put their name down on the purchase and sale agreement. They tried to walk away thinking their earnest money was the only risk they had with that deal, only to find out they could be sued as well by the other side, by the seller. So that's a concern. If you have to sign leases, all right, whenever you're signing or entering into, just say, a mortgage agreement, right, to borrow money, you're signing personally, you're giving a personal guarantee. When you give those personal guarantees, what can happen? My partner, Michael Bowman, he did a great interview with one of our clients named Eddie Russell. And the reason I'm sharing his name, because they talked about his scenario. Back in 2005, he started investing in real estate and he got really heavy into commercial. And then with the collapse of the market and all of his loans coming due at the same time, he was in this difficult situation where he owed more money than the property was worth. And it wasn't that he couldn't make the payments, it's just the banks were forced to foreclose on the property if he couldn't come to the table with $1 million so he could get his debt to equity ratio in line. He didn't want to put another $1 million into these properties. He said, listen, bank, just keep it going. I will continue to make the payments. I've never defaulted. They said they wouldn't do it. So they forced him into a situation where he had to default, and then they had $1 million, or maybe it was $2 million deficiency judgment against him. And so at that point in time, they wanted to look at his assets, and we put together a plan. Actually, Michael Bowman, our partner, put together a plan for him, and they drug him into supplemental proceedings, and they made him disclose all of his assets. Now, this is a key concept here that you have to realize, is that when we put together an asset protection plan, some of the things I'm going to be teaching you is how to hold your assets so people don't know you have them. And I've heard people tell me before, why is that important? Well, it's for situations like this, that you don't want someone to know what you have. Because if they know what you have, they know where to find your assets, they know whether or not you're worth going after. Because typically in a lawsuit, you just can't, I mean, you can ask anybody you want. They could have asked Eddie while they were suing him, what do you have? And if he had poor representation, he may disclose it all. You don't have to disclose your assets until they get a judgment against you. That's key here. When we're talking about asset protection, putting yourself in a situation where you don't have to disclose what it is you own. So he had the judgment entered against him, and now he's responsible for it. But then he showed him how he was structured. And so a bank that had him dead to rights on a personal guarantee, $2 million, chose to walk away. And the reason they walked away was because of the structures we implemented for him. We put his assets beyond the reach of his creditors. They made it so difficult, they realized it's not worth going after. So they allowed him to walk. So when you're thinking about this, when you sign on your personal home mortgage or any type of rental agreement, mortgage agreement where it requires a personal guarantee, you want to protect your assets from those guarantees you're making. Landlord risk, if you have rental real estate, I mean, these are right out of the headlines. Tenant sue landlord alleging toxic mold, just what we talked about. Fort Worth landlord jailed and sued after cutting off grandmother's utilities when she was short on rent. Sued for sexual harassment. Airbnb story where they were sued because there were meth pipes everywhere where they went into the property. So what happens here is that when you own real estate, of course, you're going to be at risk for these types of lawsuits and many more. A recent situation I had discussed with a new client had to do with a dog. So here's the situation. Her tenant has a dog. And now it wasn't a Rottweiler. Yeah, it was a Rottweiler. It was tied up, chained up in the backyard. Well, the neighbor's property, or the neighbor has a little yapper dog. I forget what type of dog it was. Well, this little yipper dog runs around the fence, goes under the fence, and tries to attack the Rottweiler that's chained up. Well, that's not going to happen. The Rottweiler has 100 pounds on it. And so it starts shaking it and doing whatever it's doing. Then the yipper dog's no longer yipping. Now it's screaming. And the owner hears about it. She runs into the backyard to pull her dog away. And the Rottweiler does what Rottweilers are trained to do. They bite. And they bit her. And she got bit really good, or really bad, depending on how you look at it, right? From the dog's point of view, her point of view. So what does she do then? She turns around and sues because she states that they had a vicious dog in their backyard. And somehow people miss the fact that the only reason the neighbor was in the backyard, which is trespassing to begin with, is the fact that her dog was not under control, that she allowed it to roam to get out. But that doesn't stop them from bringing a lawsuit. So they're suing them now, and the thing is that the insurance company is not protecting them because they label that dog as a vicious dog, and they will not cover those types of claims. And so this individual is now all on their own. And they never predicted or foresaw that type of lawsuit from occurring. So as a landlord, you have this type of risk, and you want to make sure that you're going to take steps to minimize that. And I'll show you how, through the use of limited liability companies and land trusts, how you can minimize that. Children. If you have children, they create risk for you, all right? Let's face it. Kids do things that are probably not the brightest. I know as a child, I was doing stuff that was stupid. When it came to drinking beer, which I did in high school, I would buy all my beer from my dad's apartment managers. And not only would I buy it, I introduced them to all my friends. And so everyone would go that I knew that hung out with me to my dad's apartment managers, with or without me, to purchase beer. And if somebody would have been involved in an accident, who would have been at fault? My father. It would have all rolled back up on him because I was putting my father into this situation without realizing the risk involved because I'm a kid, right? We don't appreciate that. We're only focused on where we are today. I remember I was at one of Don's events a couple of years ago, and it was a live event in Orlando. And I sat down with an individual. She's now a client. And it was on I think it was on Tuesday. We sat down in the afternoon and I laid out a plan for her. And I said, this is what you need to do. You need to get this in place right away to protect yourself. She had a business and some real estate investments. And her response to me was, I need to think about it. And really, I looked at her and go, what do you need to think about? Everything is in your own name. You recognize the importance of this. You've made a commitment to be here for 3 days, to take action, to improve yourself. What is stopping you right now? She couldn't articulate it. All she said, I need to think about it. Well, the next morning at 7 a.m., I received a text from her. I need to meet with you before class. It's urgent. Class starts at 8. Can we meet at 7:20? Please, I need to meet with you. Now, whenever you get a text like that, you know something's up. So I went down and met with her before I got started in the morning. And sure enough, what had occurred between the day before and today was that her son was driving down the freeway, going out to one of her properties, had a weed eater in the back of the truck, was lazy, didn't tie it down, just threw it in the back and took off. That weed eater, when he was driving down the freeway, flew out of the back of his truck and barely missed the car behind them. Nobody was hurt, but that was her wake-up call. And now she's sitting there scrambling, saying, I need to get this set up right now, signing the agreement, ready to move forwards. Now, had that been a foot to the right, it would have taken out that driver. And if it took out that driver and she called me, there's nothing I could do for her at that point in time because the harm had already occurred. And anything I try to do then would be considered a fraudulent transfer, and I would have to decline assisting her. And so this is how fast life can change for people, and you don't want to be caught in that situation. Children create risk for us. Personal injury goes without saying, that if you're involved in an accident, then you're going to be held personally responsible. And many times accidents can be the simplest of mistakes that create huge liability for us. And, just like the small fender benders. I remember this when I was in law school. I actually worked for a personal injury attorney at one point in time. And the job posting basically said, do you want to make a lot of money? And here I am in law school thinking, yeah, I'd like to make some money, good money. And I went up and I applied, and it was surreal in this application. All he wanted to know was I a creative writer? And the reason why he wanted to know this is because I had to write demand letters arguing why our clients were entitled to the amount of money we were seeking from the insurance company or from them, how their lives were affected as a result of the injuries they sustained in the most minuscule of accidents, things that most of us would just walk away from and think, wow, this is nothing. I stubbed my toe. How can stubbing your toe be worth $80,000? It just takes a creative writer like myself to outline out how your life has been affected as a result of that. And so I did that for a number of years, and it taught me a lot on how the legal profession works. I brought in a good amount of money. For everyone I'd write, I get paid $300. And so I just did the math. If I wrote 10 a month, I'm making $3,000 a month. But it was a very distasteful job. But I just saw how that side of it works and how they go after people. And so you do not want to put yourself in that situation. All right, here are all the different ways you can be sued. I mean, as I said, we can go on forever about this. You can have housing discrimination. That's a big one right now. Property manager torts, toxic mold, COVID-19. You can just read them here. Employee discrimination claims. That's also really big. If you're a small business owner, you have to be extremely careful there. Document everything. Tenants leave your property, vacate the property, and they leave their goods behind, which typically trash. But if you throw it away without putting that in a bailment situation, which means you hold it for them for a specific period of time, you can be sued for that. Failure to pay your employees overtime. When they work overtime and they don't tell you, you're still going to be held liable. I have a client that's in that situation right now. There's just so many different things here on ways in which the legal system works against us. It's as if you find success or you're trying to improve your life, there's an attorney out there that wants to knock you back 3 steps. 1 step forward, 3 step backs if they can. You can change that dynamic by the way you structure yourself. That is why here are some of the tools we're going to be discussing. The equipment that we use to protect ourselves will be limited liability companies, corporations, and land trusts. Those are the 3 primary tools that we use to combat the other side, to preserve our assets, to make sure that we can maintain the wealth that we're creating. And so these are the planning components that we were going to focus on. Number 1, it's going to be anonymity. That is setting up your entities, your assets, so that people don't know that you have them. Often my partner Toby coined this phrase, you can't sue what you can't see. So why not set yourself up in a way in which somebody's looking at you, they don't know what you have. So many people own assets in their own name. It says they put everything in their own name and they think, well, what does it matter? It matters a ton. Because if I am looking at you and I'm trying to determine whether or not you're an attractive defendant, because if I only get paid based on what I collect, the more I can find attached to you, the more emboldened I become, the more I want to take this case on. The other aspect of what we're going to do with our planning is we want to protect you from your investments. That is, when you invest into real estate or assets that create liability for you, you don't want to be put at risk in case something goes wrong with those. So I'll show you how to minimize that risk. And then we want to protect your investments from you. And many times people don't see this side. They often see the side of the assets can create liability. And so when I'm talking to individuals, they'll tell me, Clint, you talked about rental real estate. I don't have rental real estate, so I don't need asset protection right now. Maybe I need estate planning, but nothing else. What they fail to realize here is that you don't have to have dangerous assets in order to be sued. I talked about this already. Just the mere fact that you go out there, you get in a car, you have children, there are a number of different ways you can be sued. Personal guarantees, they create liability for you. So you need to ensure that you're taking your assets and you're protecting them from your personal liability. That is the things that you do in your life that creates liability for your assets. That is a key component of asset protection planning that is oftentimes missed by practitioners. Many times I'll hear from clients that their local attorney that they work with had recommended that they, or not recommended, called into question, why did you create these structures? What benefit would it be for you? You don't have any dangerous assets. It's not that we have to have dangerous assets in order to be sued, okay? I said, go back to that attorney. Ask him how many times he has represented someone who is being sued that doesn't have real estate or a dangerous asset. I guarantee you he has plenty of clients that have been sued for multiple different things that are outside of the dangerous asset context. So this is what we want to do, is to make sure that we're protecting ourselves. And if you think insurance is going to be there to protect you, I would just suggest you think again, because when it comes to insurance planning, there's a lot of things that it does not cover, and I will show you some of the things that you do not have or protections that are not there with insurance, because that is a common fallacy, mistake that people make. I'm just going to load up on insurance only to be sued to find out that their policy does not cover the type of claim that was brought against them. It's really troubling for me.
Okay, so that was some words of wisdom and some great information from Clint Coons, nationally recognized asset protection attorney, real estate investor. He's a brilliant guy when it comes to strategy. And what I'd like to do is I just want to be able to open your eyes to the fact that it's important to have the right business and investing structure. And the reason you want that structure is both to protect yourself from liability, but also minimize your taxation and make sure that you have a true wealth creation set of tools working in your favor. Because the bottom line is, it doesn't matter how hard you work if you don't protect yourself on the other side from any kind of liability that may happen to you. So those are the thoughts I want to share with you today. I'm going to drop a link in the show notes for this episode because I'd like to be able to give you access to other information from Clint, as well as our High Net Worth Summit we have coming up in September. We've got some great resources. If you go to the Daily Mastermind website, you're going to be able to find, and that's dailymastermind.com, you're going to be able to find free ebooks on asset protection, different contacts, strategies, and things that you can use. I provide those resources for you because as an entrepreneur, as an investor, I know it's important to be educated and always be learning and growing and applying strategies that the wealthy have applied for many, many years. So I hope these are all ideas that have helped you, and I hope that if you have any questions, you'll hit me up. I'm always there to be able to assist you with what you're doing, and I will talk with you soon. Have a great day.